Hello everybody, welcome to my channel, Metahumanism. It's going to be a principled and grounded philosophical investigations into all things related to life, current events, all areas of philosophy, nothing is excluded, and doing it exploring a meta-humanist and meta-modernist perspectives more specifically, and also quite a lot will be devoted to Ukraine. I am Ukrainian American, so let me just add some biographical details for those who don't know me. My name is Bogdan Pechenyak. I was born in the western part of Ukraine, in the city of Lviv, which is first large city from the border of Poland, one of the closest large cities. Long has been a capital of Ukrainian culture, has a lot of beautiful architecture. So if you, once we reach peace at some point, I encourage everyone to visit it, and it's beautiful. It was founded in the 13th century by King Danilo of the Galician-Volhynian Kingdom, which was one of the descendant states from the former Rus state, the Kievan Rus. The kingdom, the Galician kingdom, emerged in the late 12th century by two principalities of Galicia and Volhynia uniting together, and then it became prominent in the wake of the Mongol invasion when Kiev Rus kind of separated, fragmented into pieces, and the Galicia-Volhynian kingdom was able to resist being conquered by the Mongols. I think there was some relation, both vassal, suzerain relation, but it was one of the stronger states that withstood the Mongol invasion. So I was born in Ukraine when it was still part of the Soviet Empire, and yes, it was a Russian-dominated empire with all the other nationalities that were subjugated or oppressed, and this much Reagan got correctly when he said it's the evil empire. And so but I grew up in independent Ukraine. I was 10 years old when it fell apart, and I was much too young to understand the full implication of that event, but I was lucky to have lived through it all the same. At the same time, it always makes me think about, there's this Chinese proverb, better to be a dog in times of peace than a human in times of chaos. Just the idea that, or somebody, there's also this curse, people repeat, that I wish you to be born in the time of changes, Well, we're living through such times now. It seems like change is just accelerating constantly, and some people are cheering it on and want to, accelerationists want to even increase that speed and think it's very good for societies and for people. But I'm more critical and skeptical. So in my life, in addition to the Soviet Union collapsing when I was 10, the next big change and factor that introduced chaos in my life was immigration. When I finished high school in Ukraine, my parents and I came to the United States as immigrants, and this was in 1998. So that was, a culture shock, new society, completely different culture, and completely different history. Obviously, that was a huge event. It's a huge event in anybody's life. Just like people who are refugees today from the war, it's not. Don't confuse immigration with tourism. I say it's a very different experience when you visit a country as a tourist, and then when you actually migrate and try to live there. So by education, I'm a sociologist. By conviction, I'm an eternal student of life. Semper tiro is the Latin phrase, and it's an allusion to a Ukrainian writer, Ivan Franko, who was born in the middle of 19th century and died in early 20th. And he is one of the most prominent writers, Ukrainian writers, philosophers, political activists and thinkers, all around. He's sometimes, because of the things he wrote, he's known as the Ukrainian Moses, in terms of how he helped consolidate the Ukrainian national consciousness. And one of his poetry collections, and also one of the poems within that collection is called Semper tiro, which is Eternal Student. And I actually translated it specifically because I didn't find any translations available, so I translated it for you, and I will include that. I'll post it separately so you can read and just enjoy it yourself. So, so he was. That was an illusion to him. So I'm by conviction, I'm an eternal student of life, and I'm also an intellectual vagabond. I say that's an allusion to another Ukrainian writer. His name is his pen name is V.Domontovych. He was named Victor, but as a pen name, it was always V.Domontovych. And he is 20th century writer, beginning in middle 20th century. He was very interesting, very mysterious, and very a controversial figure, but he was a great writer, and he was also a scientist and researcher in various disciplines, a polymath. And he wrote about a sense of groundlessness when things change around him. Obviously, World War I, fascism, communism, World War II, all of those events, crises. That's when he lived, and so he reacted to those, and he this idea of intellectual vagabondism, trying to find your place and feeling groundless in a changing world. So that's kind of relevant to me, and that's why I use that phrase. So I'm sure I'll make separate videos about each of these personalities that I mentioned, Franko, but I will include links at least for you to explore the basics if you're interested. To look at it in a different way, I have three strikes against me, to use a baseball metaphor. One is I'm Ukrainian. Second, I'm an immigrant. And third, I have intellectual interests. So that's a person that some Americans right now just love to hate. It's just I have nothing going for me in those terms. But haters be hating, as they say. So we just gonna keep doing what we think is right for ourselves and for the world. That's all we can do. So why am I welcoming you to yet another YouTube channel? Why add to the noise? There's you might think like today we need a signal, and I agree wholeheartedly, and I intend to provide that signal. That's my hope, is to cut through the noise and to add to the signal. And we are living in turbulent times. Obviously, I don't have to prove that. I think everybody is aware of that. The world in the 21st century, I think more than ever demonstrates the old truism that nothing is permanent except change, which actually comes from the ancient Greek pre-Socratic philosopher called Heraclitus. So he came before Socrates, who's kind of the milestone of philosophy, and everything that came before him is known as pre-Socratic period. Various different schools, but they're all known as kind of before Socrates, because he made such a huge earthquake to philosophy. So he Heraclitus focused on he saw universe as in constant flux. Nature, society, human life. So he kind of that was his perspective, and he influenced a lot of people, obviously throughout the ages until this day, by arguing that way. The clearest sign of me how we're entering a very new period in human history, or a kind of in recent history at least, for sure, is the moment on February 24th, which was the exact third year anniversary of the Russian invasion in Ukraine. And at the UN on that day, there was a vote for a resolution to condemn the Russian invasion. Straight up, just condemn the invasion, the aggression. Not very controversial, really. It's not in debate. Russia invaded Ukraine. It was an aggression. I mean, people debated, but they don't have, the facts. Reality exists whether we are deluded or lie about it. Truth continues existing, and so that's the truth. And for that vote, there were several countries who voted against, and among those countries, there were two very unlikely pairs, Iran and Israel, and USA and Russia. All of them voted against. And so I think that is a clear sign that something is different right now. This is a new situation, new period, that recent decades and post-World War II order is no longer it does no longer apply. It's crumbling, and so we can use another quote by an Italian philosopher, Antonio Gramsci, who said he was imprisoned by a fascist regime, Mussolini regime. He was a communist in Italy, and he was imprisoned by the Mussolini regime, and he wrote a very famous work called Prison Notebooks, in which this quote can be found, which says, "The old world is dying, the new world is struggling to be born, and now is the time of monsters." I think that's kind of just very relevant, and I'm sure there are other quotes. I personally haven't read that work, but perhaps I should, given that we are kind of living through some kind of echo of early in the 20th century right now. They say history doesn't repeat, but it certainly rhymes, and it's rhyming right now. Just a few words about Antonio Gramsci. He was, as I said, Italian Marxist philosopher, political theorist, and activist, and he's most well known for such concepts as cultural hegemony, which kind of highlighting how the ruling classes in the society maintain their power not necessarily just by physical violence, and order and maintaining order through force, but also through culture and ideology. And another concept was war of position, which is also focusing on culture and about how people with different ideas or theories struggle it out for domination or for influence. Just like today's meme wars, you try to gain a position, not by an actual war, physical warfare, but by cultural warfare, or intellectual. So academia or whatever else. He was also a founding member of the Italian Communist Party, and that's part of the reason he was imprisoned by Mussolini. So he's pretty influential on critical theory, literature, in literature and other disciplines, humanities, political science, in social sciences in general, and cultural studies, for example. So. A relevant thinker. So in other words, based on that quote about the time of monsters, it is my argument, my belief, and part of my mission statement for this channel is that we need philosophy to help us understand the world, even in peacetime, but especially when the time of crisis and wars and rapid change. Philosophy, as some of you may know, literally means love of wisdom. Philo is love, Sophie is wisdom, so love of wisdom, and it's basically just applying thought, human thought, to any and all spheres of life to understand them better in a principled way. I intend to make a separate video which kind of focusing on various types of thinking we can engage in as humans, and the various movements of thought, so to speak, like analysis, synthesis, judgment, and some others. because at bottom, thought is a living thing. It's something that has to move. It must move to produce ideas and combine ideas and so on, and make conclusions, inferences, whatever it is, or judgments, aesthetic judgments on what's beautiful or not. Otherwise, if you don't move your thought, if you just cling to some one thought for all your life, it's not really living. It's ossified thought. It's petrified. It's dead. So that's my perspective, at least. Now, let me explain a few things about, I guess, rules for this and any others, for any social media or space where there will be any discussions of what I say. There are certain rules or guidelines I will follow as a moderator wherever I have power to moderate the discussion, any spaces that I direct and control. Since this is about philosophy, politics will invariably be part of and parcel of what we discuss here. I just mentioned fascism and communism while talking about Gramsci, and I consider them two of some of the most pernicious ideologies ever developed with the worst real-world effects. In symbolic terms, they produced Hitler and Stalin, right? Fascism and Nazism are the same kind of group of ideologies, produced Hitler, and then communism, authoritarian communism, produced Stalin, respectively. And so as a Ukrainian who is painfully aware of how Ukrainian people and nation has been ravaged, was ravaged by both Nazis and Soviets in the whole Eastern Europe, not just Ukraine, but obviously my perspective is Ukrainian, ravaged during the World War II and by Soviets afterward as well. I make no distinction between these evils. Evil has many faces, and to me, Hitler, Stalin, and Putin today and others represent just different faces of evil. So, we can discuss that separately, and I'll probably make a video explaining my position on the war and so on. Now, philosophy requires freedom. So that was one. And then philosophy requires freedom and tolerance to be able to explore new ideas and engage in free exchange of ideas. I intend to honor that commitment, but a line must be drawn somewhere. And for me, that line is not tolerating intolerance towards others. This is necessary just to ensure tolerance in all other respects. We can debate freely, we can disagree, we can whatever, but we have to do it with empathy, respect, and dignity. Any signs of aggression based on racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, any other such prejudices and bigotry, sexism, misogyny, class or cultural distinctions, homophobia, and other such hateful opinions and prejudices will not be tolerated and will be punished in some way. I will go and make decisions and do my best to be fair to everyone, but I will not be entertaining or allowing that kind of discourse here. I'm not Elon Musk, and I'm not gonna pretend I'm defending freedom of speech while amplifying hatred and Russian propaganda. That's no. So another red line of mine is my support for Ukraine. That's kind of obvious already. I said I'm Ukrainian, and I already said a few things about the war and what's going on. But as I said, I will create the video to explain my position more specifically, more explicitly, and maybe dispel some of the myths out there and in the propaganda being spread. But for now, it suffices to say that I welcome reasoned argument. I understand people have different attitudes and opinions about a complex topic like war, but it has to be grounded in fact and reasoned, justified opinion, not just some propaganda, Russian or otherwise. That will not be allowed. Third red line, and the final one for the time being at least, I don't see the need to create unnecessary rules. The third line is which I kind of already mentioned, that when I refer to thought being a living thing that moves, and dogmas and kind of ossified opinions. So there are no dogmas on this channel that are safe from being examined or questioned and critiqued in a reasoned, rational manner. So that's what philosophy is about for me. So there are other ways of philosophizing. Certainly there are, like in theology, that's just a type of philosophy. You start from a certain dogmatic position which you want to defend, and then you build your arguments from there. That's not my approach. I'm a proponent of critical philosophy, which examines its skepticism, criticism, and examination of your beliefs. And we'll talk about that more, I'm sure. And I don't mean so when I say dogmatic thinking is not kind of welcome here, or is not there's no dogma that will be respected, I don't mean that I will still conduct myself with empathy, respect, and dignity when somebody challenges me with different opinions or different views, and come from that's part of the debate, part of the discussion. But piety is not very high on the list of virtues for me. It's not a very I don't value it as much as some other people might. So, and we can discuss that as well. Whether how much should we value piety as a virtue. Philosophers certainly have, since the Greeks. That was one of the key things. And for example, Socrates, a very famous philosopher, was put to death by Athenians because they thought he was morally corrupting the youth. That was their argument. But what he was doing is basically questioning the received beliefs and dogmas, and they didn't like it. Basically, that's what happened. And he refused to escape Athens like some philosophers, others did. He didn't go into exile, and he actually decided to drink the poison that he was given, and follow through with the capital punishment. And that story is very famous now in philosophy. Obviously, it's how far he was prepared to go to show that he believes in what he believed in what he was doing, and he was not going to put it in question by escaping and being shamed. My faith. So as I said, I don't respect any dogmas. So that kind of brings us into the sphere of religion also. My faith is that of a moderate skeptic and a heretic, if you will. And I'll explain it in one of the future videos, what I mean by that. Now, creating this channel may be viewed as a culmination of sorts for me in many ways. It's a culmination of my life experience so far, of my intellectual development to this date, and it's a way for me to continue developing and continue examining certain things, and that's why it's called meta-humanism. That's the perspective I want to explore. I've explored it to some extent, and meta-modernism. I explored it to some extent, but obviously there's still a lot that I don't know and I want to learn, and so this will be my way of doing that and sharing it with others. As I said, my conviction is, by conviction, I'm an internal student. So this is part of just my lifelong process of learning and new things and understanding the world. And I'm just kind of inviting you to join me on this particular journey from this point forward. And my personal experiences and intellectual interests will inform everything I say on here for sure. So I'm excited in many ways to be able to share it with others, and what I've learned through studying and through life and through mistakes I've made, and so possibly having a chance to help others by providing them my perspective and just say something interesting and worthy of being listened to. So and to understand the current events better as well. And that brings us back to the notion that we are living through the period of crises, right? Many crises, not just some one simple crisis. And that is quite obvious. I don't think I need to waste my breath on that. Since I live in the USA, we cannot ignore the elephant in the room. And that's a very apt metaphor because of the elephant being the symbol of the Republican Party. So the elephant is obviously the Trump administration and the MAGA movement, the phenomenon of the MAGA movement. This is bound to come up a lot in my future episodes. Obviously, it's important, it's relevant, it's current, so we have to talk about it. We can't ignore that. And but for now, I'll just say that the very notion that this MAGA movement has, but that they consider themselves to be the only true patriots saving America from what they call demon rats or radical leftists or whoever else, the demon immigrants, illegal immigrants. Anybody they demonize, they're saving America, and the fact they believe this and they believe all the lies they have been told repeatedly, and they are continue to be told on a daily basis by their leaders within their movement and within the administration. I think it's kind of it points to. It's a result of confusion, of lack of education, of bad ideas being spread out, the lack of understanding of what the words actually mean, the very words they say. They don't understand the meaning, the true meaning of those words or principles or values, and the lack of their understanding of history, including history of ideas, political ideas, but generally ideas in general, how they developed and where they came from, and they don't understand that, and ignorance breeds contempt and anger and whatever else. It's one of the I explored Buddhism in part of my life, and ignorance is one of the major kind of. They don't have a notion of sin in Buddhism, but it's one of the corruption. One of the ways people are corrupted is ignorance. One of the major things Buddhism kind of fights against is ignorance. Another one is passion, which is too much emotion, anger and hatred, whatever, any kind of emotion, too much of it. Anyway, that's a separate issue. This anti-intellectualism, actually, which I mean, not knowing the ideas and how they developed, and not knowing history, that's and even being hostile to knowledge and to somebody who has intellectual interests or values knowledge and education. That hostility has been part of American culture for a long time, and there's a very excellent book. I actually have it right here, as it happens. The Anti-intellectualism in American Life by Richard Hofstadter. It's a classic, and especially for those who are American, I do encourage you to go and read it if you haven't, if you never heard of it. It's a Pulitzer Prize winner. I didn't even remember that. In 1964, it won the Pulitzer Prize. So, and other works by this historian are also great. I read it many years ago, and they're all excellent. I learned a lot from them anyway. I think this is a good place to stop for the first introductory video. I just wanted to get the train rolling. With all the events, somebody was commenting on the Facebook today that it feels like there's so much lies and propaganda and craziness and people saying wrong things and reacting emotionally to the events and trying to calm everyone down. A friend of mine was commenting, and I said it's like Ozzy Osbourne, the eternal Ozzy, saying, I'm going off the rails on a crazy train. And that's what it feels sometimes with the social media and with craziness that goes on a daily basis. So before I finish, I just want, and I will do this every time, I think, until it's relevant, I want to ask you to support Ukraine as well. If you are, thank you very much. I think Ukrainians everywhere support and are grateful to everyone who's helping them in any way, by repeating the truth, by sending money, but whatever. In any way you can help Ukraine fight for freedom and democracy, greatly appreciated. So I want to encourage encourage you to do that. If you haven't ever done that, please do. There are some organizations I will link to, at least 3 specific ones I think are very trustworthy. They do good work, and so you can pick which one you prefer. And of course, please support my content. And if you're interested, if you like what I'm saying, and if you're interested to hear more, I gave you some previews of what I could discuss, and I have many ideas, and many, obviously we'll be discussing what meta-humanism is, what humanism is. That's like a major theme, obviously, and one of the next videos will be definitely focused on that. So there's a lot to talk about, and I'm excited. I'm looking forward, and I hope more, you will enjoy it and appreciate it as well. So as I said, support my content. If you find it interesting, subscribe, comment, like, share, send some financial help to support my efforts. I will provide the links, the drill. I don't need to go through the whole thing. You just, description to this video will have all the information necessary. I also welcome any feedback and criticism, suggestions, maybe topics you're interested in hearing about, or specific questions you have about philosophy, about Ukraine, anything really. I'm welcome. It's part of otherwise there's no point in doing anything like this. It's part of the experience. It's a major part of the experience, and that's why we're all here. I think that's really it for now. Thank you very much for listening so far, and I'm looking forward. See you next time.